の勝利を楽しみにしています。可能性を感じています。ファイトです。
Aside from the biggest beta in recent history this past weekend, I'm of course referring to that of Diablo IV, we also had a playable look at what Capcom is next bringing to the table that is not named Street Fighter, and that game is Exoprimal. I do have to say that at its reveal last year, I just wasn't interested in it at all. I thought it was an extremely dumb premise, and the gameplay looked bland and old and tried and tired, and I just pushed the game's existence kind of from my mind. But boy, I was only right about the premise being dumb, but the premise being dumb is actually a great thing in the case for this game. And the game itself, at least a slice of what we had available, is an absolute blast, and now it's definitely a title on my radar for when it comes out in mid-July. The slices of gameplay we were given definitely seem to be removed and separated from the story and narrative that we had been provided by the earlier trailers that were available, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. So jury is still out on what, if at all, there will be for the single-player campaign or that side of the game. But if it's just a take on what we sort of played in the beta, which would kind of put it towards the territory of what was initially with the original Titanfall launch, that might be okay in this situation because it was just such an absolute blast. Essentially, you and 4 other players called Exo Fighters are put onto a team of 5. You are able to control and choose various different exosuits that do have different weapons, abilities, and of course, this means that they fit into one of the 3 Holy Trinity rules. You have Assault, which is just DPS, damage per second, Tank, and Support. You are given time at the beginning of each match to choose an exosuit that will complement the rest of the teams that they have chosen. There's nothing stopping you from changing mid-match as well, though in my case I always found I usually had like 3 tanks on a team, no supports, and 2 damages, assaults, and that just, in those matches we definitely lost, so you do want to make sure you have a balanced team composition for the match. Each suit does oddly have its own personality and voice lines and its very own distinctive look and art style, so you can easily tell who is piloting what suit, and that can be important later on a match. We did have 10 available different exosuits in the beta. These are on the official website for Exoprimal as well, so you can take a look at those and what roles they fit into. Like I said, naturally it's best to take a tank, a support, and 3 assault exosuits to blast through the challenges and objectives at each level, and especially at the end of each mission, where there's a twist that I just wasn't prepared for, but was definitely a fun and hectic change to the formula up to that point for each match. Now, in the beta, customization for these exosuits and the Exofighter themselves was pretty limited. Essentially, for the Exofighter, you can choose between a few different faces, hairstyles, hair colors, eye colors, overall suit color, which you can pop out from your exosuit mid-match if you want to change or to avoid being killed in it. There is a cooldown on resummoning again, so there's a little bit of customization there. Further into the game, especially in trailers and what is available on the website and from other early looks at the game, there is more in-depth customization available for the exosuit, such as color, a few maybe pieces of gear here or there, perhaps even abilities from what I've seen from what was unlocked at the end of gameplay, but that stuff was locked for the beta, just seeing it pop up as unlocks. Now, some stuff that was available for customization were things called rigs. Now, these are some extra abilities you can put that are usable across all of the exosuits. So you had a laser cannon that would help clear a large group of enemies. You had a repair field, which you could launch and give you like a little circular AoE effect to help repair yourself or allies. Then there was also a few other ones, like a bladed shuriken you can throw, which would paralyze enemies that it went through, which was kind of neat, good against dinosaurs and larger dinosaurs. Then you also had crafting abilities, such as a wall, which can prevent projectiles and enemies from coming through of it, a sort of hovering platform to jump on if you wanted to get out of the horde of smaller little raptors attacking you, which, though the tiny pterodactyls that flew around could definitely bother you at that point. Stuff like that. There was even a little buildable turret you can do that would shoot at enemies in front of it for a duration before it went dormant and you'd have to wait to build it again. So that was kind of neat, but like I said, there is further customization that will be available in the full release of the game, or perhaps another beta when that launches. Now, each exosuit also had its own level, which means that there's probably some cosmetics or abilities for each exosuit that you would have to unlock individually from the rest. Now, I'd much prefer it if these were unlocked via the exosuit type, so all of the assaults would unlock at the same pace, all of the tanks would unlock at the same pace, and all of the supports would unlock at the same pace. That's a little more user-friendly, but that would definitely perhaps lower the lifespan of the game, because then you wouldn't have people going back and trying perhaps maybe an exosuit that they didn't know they would like at the beginning and leveling that up. Now, there was nothing stopping people from choosing the same exosuits in the beta, so perhaps in another mode, maybe more competitive mode, which I can definitely see happening for this game. It's definitely a Uke multiplayer premise. They might have that lock to be where it was like an Overwatch, where you can have one of each exosuit and maybe one of each tank and support roles in the 3 assaults. So who knows where that'll go. That's completely out in the future. It might not see anything sort of competitive, though it definitely has a potential, and it's definitely out there, though it wouldn't be long-lived. Now, each match in Wargame pits 2 teams of 5 on the same exact level, sort of against one another until the very end. Now, you'll be completing the near similar objectives sometimes in perhaps a different location, or one team in one location, then they'll complete that and move to another location where that other team just completed theirs, and they'll swap positions. So this is definitely neat, and you can see kind of like a ghost sort of outline of the other team completing their objectives at the time. They're kind of like red translucent outlines that you can see, and you can also definitely tell what sort of exosuit that they are rocking and operating. Now, this is one portion of the match, and I would say it's roughly probably about 75% of the match, maybe 66 to 75% of the match is this sort of time trial against the other team. Now, the last portion of the match is where it gets really interesting. You're no longer competing against the ghosts of the other team, but you're competing on the same battlefield with the other team, where a surprising bit of PvP actually comes into it. So rather than defeating waves of enemies or a rather large and more tough, difficult dinosaur, you're going to be trying to complete an objective such as moving what could be considered like a payload from one location to another that has health while you're defending it from dinosaurs and the other team, to kind of charging up a hammer, which you'll then use to attack an objective and try to complete all of those along the path before the other team. During these phases, you can directly interact with the other team, attack them, destroy them, then they'll have to wait to respawn. It was such a fantastic and hectic change of pace. It was great. Now, during the other portions of the match where you're just fighting against their ghost and you're being told you are completing objectives faster than the other team or slower by the narrator, opportunities do arise for you to dominate an extremely large and powerful dinosaur. Now, this will allow you to invade the other team's level layout and attack them while they are trying to do their objectives. Now, this is kind of a double-edged sword, because when you do and leave to do this, you are leaving your team alone behind to fight. So it was really fun when you'd have your tank who's there to help hold the front line and defend, say, the support while the assaults do their damage. They'd leave and you'd get wiped out, or your support would leave and the tank would have no support, which is why I ended up taking the healing area of effect rig, is because I couldn't trust my teammates. But this change to the gameplay design was fantastic. Now, at the end of each match, you do have a match MVP who is shown standing next to their mech. I'm sure there'll be some sort of cosmetics or customizations where you'll have different poses and whatnot, but you're given a score, you're given your MVP. One thing I did notice that I thought was kind of a problem: it was really easy to hit MVP as a tank because you're absorbing damage, you're doing objectives usually first, you're just as viable as a assault and doing damage to other players' exosuits if need to be, definitely the dinosaurs. You're just better suited for certain objectives in the final portion of the match, such as carrying the charge hammer to destroy the objectives, while the supports are just kind of left out to dry. You are doing less damage and killing less dinosaurs because your focus is on healing your teammates, and particularly the tank. So in a lot of cases where, based on the stats at the end of the match, I was killing 75% as many you know, dinosaurs and doing as much damage as the assault, I would still be in last place just because of that gap there. So that's probably something that should be ironed out, because while I was well above the enemy team's support, if they had one, in dinosaurs destroyed, killed, whatever, damage done to them, healing done to my teammates, as well as damage and kills to the enemy team, I was always in last place on my team. So support is just kind of really unfulfilling, and that's probably something they should want to balance out. One last point about what was available in the beta I'd like to make is that they did have a surprising amount of different level layouts, designs, and objectives available in this trial period for the game, which did create more replayability in the beta than, say, when at a certain point where Diablo IV was kind of just elongated into a long spectacle over an entire arc. This created replayability in the small arenas that Exoprimal was focused on, and the team in the PvEPVP combat that was available. I only came across the same maps a few times now, albeit I did only play it for probably about 2 hours, each match going from 15 to 20 minutes, which is, I think, a nice amount of time available. Each level also usually had like a large spectacle event if your team reached it there first. One that was particularly hilarious and fun to behold was at a certain moment your team walks up to a skyscraper and a large portal opens up above the skyscraper, and you see thousands, hundreds and thousands of dinosaurs just plummeting from the sky, tumbling down the face of the skyscraper. And it was just something to behold. They hit the ground and they start running at you and charging, and that's where that gameplay portion began. This was definitely something fun, and probably, you know, an idea taken from the Levolution aspect of the Battlefield series back when they had those big spectacles that would happen mid-match or 3/4 of the way through the match, whatever. So that was kind of nice and something hilarious. Overall, the beta I thought ran great. I had 0 performance issues whatsoever, which I was quite surprised at. Now, the game is the best looking game in the world, with all the quality and detail being stuck to primarily the exosuits themselves, which are all, like I said, extremely unique. They all have their own personality and voice lines, which leads me to believe there's some sort of AI in them or something, so who knows how that's going to go, why they have that, I don't know. Why some exosuits are male and some are decidedly female with breasts, who knows. Design choice, you gotta get those robo freaks involved somehow. But the environments, they were environments. They served the purposes. The dinosaurs looked good, the weapons sounded good, the abilities looked and sounded good. It all served a really good purpose. It looked okay. So, if you are a fan of horde shooters such as Back 4 Blood recently, or Vermintide, or Darktide, those series, this is probably going to be a game for you, though it has a much more silly approach than those titles. Exoprimal, well, at least the mode that was available in the beta, which is War Games, which is the 5v5, the PvEVP mode, is definitely for you at that point. And thanks to this beta, the game is now definitely on my radar for its July 14th release.